All right. So why don't you start by telling me your name, a little bit about your identity, maybe your craft and practice.
Yeah. My name is Dawn Solis. I am turning 20 in July. I'm still 19. It's kind of weird to say out loud because I don't feel 19. But as for my identity, I have made a point to try to deconstruct those sort of labels and roles. Within the last 6 months, I've kind of realized that I'm not heteroconformative, if that makes any sense. And I'm still trying to figure out who I am, but what I do is write. I write books and poetry. Poetry to me is sort of my therapy. It's been kind of how I've been able to compartmentalize the things that have happened in my life. It's kind of hard to sum up like my identity. I'm a writer, and I feel like that is who I am, and everything else comes second.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think, I'm surprised that you're not even 20 yet because of how much you're doing already. So how many years have you done LitFest in Durant?
I've only done LitFest once,
Okay.
but I've hosted 3 poetry events. There was one year, I hosted my first one on November 9th, my second one on the 1st of December in 2024, maybe? Time for me is kind of hard because I don't see life as linear. I kind of have moments where I come in and out of awareness of where I'm at, what I'm doing, which is why my writing is a big part of who I am, because I can look back and be like, where was I 2022? I was writing Righteous Abandonment. Where was I 2023? I was writing Monsters That Brush My Hair. Where was I 2024? I was writing Falling. And now 2025, I just finished Dumpster Fire in a Meadow. And so it kind of helps me maintain my reality, if that makes any sense. We're doing Literature Fest again, October 2025. It's going to be more of a community-based mutual aid event. Last year it was more of a performative, artistic event, but this year our community needs more than that. So.
Right. So what do you think? I think it's really interesting that you see your life that way, because it sounds a little bit like you're somebody who tends to dissociate. And instead of looking at it as something that needs to be cured or like taken care of the way that so many disorders are often viewed, you're like, this is part of who I am, and I'm going to respect it and find a way to work with it honestly. What led you to that? Is that something that you've always felt, or is that a decision you made?
That is a decision that I've made very, very recently. I would probably say within the last, if I'm pushing it 3 months, if I'm being realistic, within the last month and a half. Simply because ever since I was little, it was always something that needed to be fixed. There was always a cure for something. This needed to be fixed, that needed to be fixed. And I'm realizing that just because it doesn't fit within certain labels and certain societal norms doesn't mean that it's wrong. And a lot of the systems that are put in place, especially nowadays, they create problems in order to fix them. And I don't believe in creating problems.
I love that.
So my goal is to just be at peace with who I am, and not try to fix myself. Finding peace and finding joy is not the same as fixing a problem.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and that's so interesting too, that like I think it's really a hallmark of this era of mental health awareness that the approach that people are having is like, well, instead of what we previously used to do, I don't even know when you would mark this change, but like it used to be that the people with the disorders and the problems couldn't be trusted to handle their own care, because obviously, they couldn't be trusted to be knowledgeable, so it was the people that knew that had to tell them what to do. And these days it's like, well, the people who have these disorders are the ones who understand their experiences the most. And I have a dissociative disorder myself, which is why I just recently came to terms with it in the last year or two. And my own, like in my own research that my therapist helped me with, I learned that it's one of those areas where you can't just tackle it clinically. You have to deal with it spiritually too,
Yeah.
because it doesn't just exist as a clinical problem. It dwells in the more emotional, spiritual, metaphorical spaces.
Right.
And I think it's so fascinating to me that you were an artist, because it seems like your
What's in there?
cat trouble off screen. It seems that your approach to being an artist is not thinking, well, this is what I do for my job, and this is my art, and this is like the thing that I do as my passion. It's all wrapped up together
Yeah.
in one like kind of circle.
I was reading, so one of the main things that have kind of pushed me towards this is learning that your brain is going to do whatever it takes to survive and cause you the least amount of harm. So whenever you're talking about, trigger warning, just heads up about suicide, but whenever people commit suicide, it's because they're trying to save themselves
Yeah, right.
from the pain and the heartbreak, and at that point in time, their brain is going to make connections that, while maybe not based in reality, it's still their brain's reality. That's where they're at.
Yes.
And to make peace with the fact that your brain is going to make you do things in order to make you survive and make you live, has brought me a lot of peace, because I can have times where my brain is going, this is reality. And I can go, is it?
Yes, absolutely.
Is it? And when it comes to my writing, you can't solve long math problems in your head. And when you're trying to make social connections and make those when you're trying to connect social problems to reality and life, sometimes you have to write it down, which is why journaling and poetry is such a big form of therapy for a lot of people, is because your brain cannot see it like that. You have to put it down on paper and write it out. That way you can look at it from an outsider's point of view. Within the past couple of weeks, I've been telling myself that there's me, there's my brain, and there's my body. And so I check in with myself, be like, are you happy? No. Why am I not happy? Because I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Are you happy? No. Why are you not happy? Because I'm bored. Are you happy? No. Why? What is it? What can we do in order to facilitate this inner peace? And every single time it's brought me back to words and literature. If you can kind of see, like, I have physical pieces to remind myself that I'm here, and that it's okay. So that's kind of something that a lot of people have a hard time with, is reminding themselves that it's okay.
Yeah.
So.
No, and I love that your craft is part of what you use to ground yourself. I think one of the most valuable lessons I ever learned in the last couple of years with reading about, God, I forget what kind of therapy it is, but just like parts work in terms of like talking to yourself. And my partner Chris, that you've met through this project, is has a lot of trauma and episodes of varying sorts, and something I learned doing my own therapy, doing my own work on myself, that I use with him all the time, is to ask simple questions like, where are you?
Yeah.
Or like how old are you? Is one of the easiest hallmarks of like trying to tell where someone is. And I love it, because when everything is fine, the answer is going to be like, oh, I'm 34. But then when something is going on, the answer will be like, oh, I'm 20, I'm 18, I'm 17, or I'm 6. And it's learning to trust that there's some part of you that knows that and that feels that genuinely, and tapping into it and trusting it. So in terms of art and like writing, obviously poetry makes the most sense, given everything that you've just kind of outlined about being in like liminal spaces mentally, and having to take that and using it to kind of say like, well, I couldn't possibly, like, in terms of other people experiencing you as like an entity, I couldn't possibly summarize my whole existence in a work, but I can try to make a window into a moment, or like a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Is that generally how you approach things, or like what is your way of trying to communicate with other people through art?
it's hard for me because when you say I'm angry, people don't really understand what that means. But when you say my rib cage is cracking open and I can feel my heart beating on the inside and it hurts,
Right.
that's something that that's palpable. They
Yeah.
can feel it. And a lot of the time growing up, I was too sensitive, too emotional, and I've learned that those emotions are palpable, and being able to figure out how to vocalize those emotions has helped me trust myself and be at peace with myself
Yeah.
with those very, very palpable emotions. Because it gets to the point where inside my body I can taste my emotions.
Yes.
I can feel it down the tips of my toes. And I'm learning that for some people that's not a thing.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to me, especially during our political climate. Like I'm talking to them, like I can feel it, and some people can't, and they don't. And I feel like whenever I'm writing poetry and I show someone a poem, their eyes get wide every once in a while, and they'll go, "Oh, I didn't know that this is how I felt."
Yeah.
And that to me is, I have a quote that I try to read after every set that talks about how I write that way other people know that they're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, like, I wake up in the morning, who am I? A writer. Who am I? I am an advocate. Who am I? It usually comes back to my name, which is Aubrey Dawn.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, I am Aubrey Dawn. I am a writer. I am strong. I am this. Because I'm very much in the point where the things that you let your brain run away with is how you're going to live your life. And so I'm very much like, I try not to surround myself with people who are anti-arts, anti-creativity, anti-motion, because those things are contagious. Yeah.
Yeah. Given all of this, I'm really curious about what your childhood was like, if you're willing to talk about it.
Yeah, we can talk about it.
You set the boundaries here, of course.
Yeah, of course. My father was military. My mother.
Durant?
Yeah, we started out in Mangum.
Okay.
So my dad was military. My mom had me very young. My mom had me when she was barely 19. Her birthday's in August, mine's in July. And they did the best with what they had, but it wasn't enough. And I grew up kind of living in my imagination because it was the only place where I felt taken care of. I was the eldest daughter. I had a half-brother who had a pretty messed up mom. I have a little brother who also has issues as well. There's a string of mental illness in my family, a lot of absentee parenting on the upper side, and so I started writing because I was an avid reader.
Yeah, right.
And reading was an escape, and then I realized that I could create my own reality. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that I can create my own reality. Where do I want to be?
Yeah.
That's how we're going to get there. And I did my first poetry event because I asked a professor of mine, I was like, hey, is this a thing? And he was like, no one's going to come to it. He was like, I'll come perform, but no one's going to show up. And we sold out our first show.
Hell yeah, that's
and then
awesome.
we sold out our second. And I hate to say that I live on spite, but at the same time, when you tell me that I can't do something, I'm gonna go do it.
Yes, absolutely. I'm the same way.
So I've kind of had to realize that I have goals and I have aspirations, and if you're gonna get in the way, then you're not gonna be a part of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to my childhood, it's just one of those things where I have to make peace with the fact that they did the best that they could and it still wasn't good enough.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not anything really that's like, it's hard to talk about because I'm so detached from it at this point. currently no contact with my mother and father because of the political climate that we're in. I mean, even my grandfather is, I'm a fourth generation Hispanic immigrant. Like my great grandmother immigrated, she had a green card.
Yeah.
My family is very pro, it's just not, it's not a safe space.
Yeah, definitely.
And especially since I've decided to come out and I'm deciding to be more protective of my community and of the people around me, I've gotten a lot of backlash for it. So
yeah,
it's kind of one of those things where I look at the greats and I look at all of the terrible things that they've gone through, and if I can facilitate even a little bit of peace for somebody else, as the greats, like specifically I was reading Sylvia Plath's Daddy poem, and that one just, it made me realize that, like, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. Your childhood definitely doesn't define you. Does it set up roadblocks for you? 100%. I feel like every childhood ever is going to set up roadblocks just because of the way that we have parents who don't see their children as people. And so it's just one of those things where it's just something we have to overcome.
I love it. So in talking about, like, setting your own reality, I know that is something that is practiced in a lot of, like, oh my gosh, there's so many different terms. I'll just call it, like, the broader family of, like magical practices that exist in, like, a rational way. And it's also something that a lot of people do in general. Like, there's all kinds of things that are their own kind of weird, like, accepted form of, like, manifesting something into your life, like a vision board or a Pinterest board or anything like that. But also, like, there's all kinds of ways that people will lose track of reality. Like, I think that the society that we're living in, like, is in, like, the capital W, like, the West, as something that, like, greatly encourages people to disconnect from what's going on and be like, oh, well, for example, I think a really good common example that everyone will be able to relate to is, like, some man is like, I couldn't possibly be wrong. So the world must be fundamentally different in some kind of way to where I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong. I didn't do anything wrong. I don't need to accept this at all. And I've seen a lot of people that the more they refuse to acknowledge what's going on around them, the more they lose track of reality.
Right.
And like, the longer they do that, the more they have to reckon with when they finally do accept reality.
Yeah.
And, like, it can really, that's the kind of shit that destroys people and all of the other people that are connected to them. Like, that's definitely something that impacted my own life. So then, how, as somebody who's clearly already seen that happen in other people, how do you set your own reality and take advantage of your dissociation without losing track of what's there?
I love that question. So I'm glad you asked it because, my life is a series of questions. Who, what, when, where, why? Who am I? What am I doing? Where am I at? How did I get here? And so a lot of it is this is what's real, and I'll list this. So for example, I have a community where I pride myself on, I'd rather have a dime than a handful of pennies. The people that are in my life, I know that I can call them at any point in time and they're going to be there.
Yeah.
And that community is found by being 100% authentic.
Yeah.
So when it comes to things like that, and if it comes to the point where I'm like, I don't know where I'm at anymore, I have community that I can go to and be like, this is what's going on. I need you to set me straight.
Yeah.
And I will, and they will. They will.
Yeah.
For those who don't have that community, I would say journaling is a big thing for me. I have a pocketbook that I always carry around.
Nice.
So if I have just like a couple of seconds, I'll write, this is how I feel, this is what's real. And writing, this is how I feel and this is what's real, because there are times where you can feel upset, but are you upset for a real substantial reason?
Mm-hmm.
Is this really going to impact your life in the next 5, 10, 15 years? Is this something that is going to hinder or help you?
Yeah.
I just recently went through like a falling out with my friend group, and I kind of looked around and realized that what they were adding to my life wasn't equal to what they were taking out of it. And that just having that mindset of right now is 1 minute you have such a long lifespan.
Yes, yeah.
Like I keep sitting back and going, I'm not even 20 yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, it's shocking to me because I feel like I've lived such a long life, because when you are dissociating, you do lose track of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel in my head like I'm 34 years old majority of the time. But that's not accurate or true. What's true is I'm 20 years old, I'm starting my junior year of college, nothing's that serious, you know?
Yeah.
It's okay to fail, it's okay to move on, it's okay to be drowning for a second. Some of my best writing has happened when I was underwater.
Yeah.
And I hate that because it sucks, you know, that a majority of your pain comes from writing, but for the most part...
You mean a majority of your writing comes from pain?
Yeah, majority of, and I also have a hard time vocalizing. Like, talking to people, that's great, that's fine, but when I'm actually trying to, like, I can't do it very well, but I can do this.
Yeah, right.
So, this is where a lot of my reality comes from, especially because when I'm writing it down, my brain won't let me bullshit, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does.
So, yeah, I keep myself grounded in reality. I am pagan. I have my prayer practices. I have yoga and grounding methods that I do. The biggest thing that I do is sticking my fingers in dirt. That's how I really keep myself grounded, is making sure that I'm staying connected to the earth. So, yeah, that's a big one.
How did you find your way to being pagan?
I was going through some really, really messed up trauma with some Christian churches that I went to, and I was trying to come to terms with the fact that I was not straight, and that I didn't feel like I fit into the set of gender norms that was already placed out in front of me, and I felt like I was in the wrong place. And I kind of started doing some research, and I have Irish Celtic background, and I started doing some research, and I kept seeing the Morgan. And I was like, man, like, I don't know what's going on here. And I was so pissed off. I was so pissed off at God. And I was like, show me a sign. If you're real, show me a sign. Nothing. For weeks. And then finally I was walking up to my mailbox, and I was like, all right, Morgan, if you're real, show me a sign. And I was literally, it startled me. I jumped. And because I heard a crow caw at me so loudly. And that's one of her signs. Since then, we've done a lot of meditative practices, and I've kind of moved away from that. I do still consider myself a follower of Jesus, but not of the church.
Sure.
So when it comes to my pagan practices, I don't actively have the Morgan on my altar anymore, because she told me that I had to smell of death and decay to follow her. And that's not the life that we're working for. That's not the life that we're trying to go to.
Right.
So we've switched over to more peaceful practices, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does.
But the Morgan did help me get out of my home, my parents' home, and it helped me get out of Durant. And just recently, like, in this transitionary period of moving here, because I've just moved here I moved here in January, she's kind of helped me transition out of that anger and more into my power, because I thought for a long time that anger equaled power, and that's not necessarily true.
Let's see. I think it's so fascinating that you, like, I agree that, like, everybody has their own experiences, and, like, especially dissociation is one of those things that can make time feel really strange. But, like, I've seen people in my life, not me, this isn't something that I've experienced personally, but, like, a lot of the people I know felt really old by the time that they were turning 20. In fact, a lot of people that I grew up around in Tulsa felt like they weren't going to live until the end of their 20s. They were absolutely positive. And some of them were right. and some of them were wrong.
Yeah.
Everybody changes, but like a lot of those people were saying that because just like you're saying, their experiences were like getting older for them didn't feel like, oh my god, I've got my whole life ahead of me. It's all going to be up from here. It felt like you're like hiking through this endless desert, and you get to like a mile marker, and you realize that you're just on the precipice of like so much more to go. Yeah. And obviously, like, perspective is one of those things that is something you learn to shift when you're grappling with dissociation. Mm-hmm. That like you could say, well, yeah, but like also, it really is going to be wonderful for a lot of it. Like, life is not something that is always in one place or another.
Right. I'm not going to call it a cop-out because it's not a cop-out, but I have made a rule for myself that I'm not allowed to commit, simply because my uncle committed a couple of years ago, and it...
Commit?
Suicide.
Oh, I see, yes.
Yeah, so my mom's brother committed, and I had suicidal ideation for a very, very long time. It started when I was probably 13. It's probably about 13 right before I hit puberty. And has stayed in my chest. But I understand that that's my brain trying to protect itself from harm. And because it's kind of hard because I talk to people and they're like, well, I don't want to commit, but I feel like it's my only option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's kind of like where I'm saying I'm creating my own reality because I'm creating other options for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just a rule that I can't make that decision because that's not fair. It's not fair. Mm-hmm. Especially to sit there and steal the joy of my presence from other people. Because even if you feel like people don't care about you, there are people who care about you. There are people who will be very, very upset. And a lot of the issues that I have with my mother are because after my uncle committed, we were all grieving and none of us knew how to handle it. And I think there was a lot of anger in all of us because 17-year-old me was jealous. Mm-hmm. And now that I've gotten older, I kind of realized that she was 17. And now I'm 19 and I kind of look around and I keep swinging really hard between I don't know what the fuck I'm doing to this is the best time that I've ever had in my entire life.
Right, yeah.
So, I have on the other side of right where I lay my head down, it comes in waves. This will pass. Mm-hmm. And that's a big one for me. It's because it does come in waves. Yeah. And that's really all you can do is kind of sit, wait for the next wave. So, a lot of it just kind of like, I see my life as kind of like a spiral. And sometimes it feels like we're at the same point, but we're still climbing. Yeah. And we're going to keep climbing. And there's going to get to a point where I look around and I go, okay, this is good. That's kind of why I created Rising Dawn, is because I needed to make a difference. I needed to help people because I need help and I wasn't given it. So, yeah.
I think that's something I've heard people discuss a lot, not in a practical way. Like I've heard like the broader like the zeitgeist discuss, and the way that the zeitgeist always discusses things, just in practical black and white, breaking things down to the most unhelpful versions of themselves. But one of those things is like how the internet and like society are putting more and more pressure on people to start really like jumping out there and like accomplishing things a lot younger. Yeah. And that like the hallmark of when you're supposed to be successful by is shrinking.
Yeah.
And I think I can see somebody who's like read a lot of those like NBC articles or whatever. It's looking at someone like you and being like, oh yes, obviously like this is someone who's like feeling that pressure to like push themselves forward. Mm-hmm. But based on this conversation, it honestly sounds like for you doing all of these things is kind of just the natural consequence of being where you are.
Yeah. People keep asking me why, and I just keep answering because it's what I do.
Right.
It's not really, Rising Dawn wasn't really a conscious choice. Like I said, there's times where I wake up and I'm like, oh, I just published like 4 books. That's not, whoa, you know, like, and I kind of, Rising Dawn started, the first edition dropped in January, and after that first edition dropped, I remember waking up the next day and going, I own a nonprofit literary magazine. And there's still, like, I shock myself sometimes because I have been told I put too much on my plate, but I'm not hungry anymore. And I would rather have too much on my plate than feel empty.
Right.
I think we have, like, 30 minutes left.
Cool. I think that, like, so I think the question I've got now is, like, how are you going to help yourself avoid burnout?
Self-love and peace.
Yeah.
Kind of when I get there and I get to, I'm like, oh.
Right.
I'm like, okay, fine, you don't want to do that? What do you want to do?
Yeah.
What do you want to do? Last night I was feeling very overwhelmed because we have these submissions that we're trying to put together for this next edition to talk about the protests and Trump and the administration and ICE, and people are getting pulled off of Lake Murray, and I got overwhelmed and I stopped. Realized I was getting overwhelmed. I shut my computer and I spent the night watching Phineas and Ferb eating Oreos. And it's kind of just like one of those things where, like, burnout is going to happen.
Yeah.
And I hate to say suck it up, but suck it up. Like, you can do it frustrated, you can do it sad, you can do, like, there's been times where I've sat sobbing while doing whatever it is I need to do. Because your emotions should not your emotions should not be detrimental to your life. And if it's at the point where your emotions are detrimental to your life and there's a need that's not being fulfilled, and I do my best to fulfill my own needs before it gets to that point.
Right. Yeah.
Are there times where I slip up and I realize, oh my gosh, I'm in a depressive episode? Yes. But it's going to come in waves.
Yeah.
And we're going to reset, we're going to refocus, we're going to keep trucking, because we just got to keep trucking. You know, and I feel like that kind of picturing myself on a boat that's never going to stop moving has helped me find peace, because I realize that it's out of my hands. And I can do the best that I can do with what I have at the moment. And 25-year-old me might look back and be like, what the fuck did you do?
Yeah.
I currently have peace for my 17, 18-year-old self because she did the best that she could. And what I think that she did a really good job with what she had. And I'm trying to set up a system for myself that 25-year-old me, 35-year-old me is going to say the same thing. And I feel like I take care of myself well enough that it's become second nature. And there was a long time where I wasn't, and I didn't know how to take care of myself. And a lot of that has come through inner child work and talking to her and taking care of her and treating myself like I would treat my child. Because if my child is throwing a fit, if she's upset, if she's angry, am I going to scream at her? Am I going to hurt her? Am I going to not feed her or not bathe her? No. I'm going to hold her. I'm going to let her have her emotions. We're going to figure out what caused the issue. We're going to attempt to alleviate the pain of that issue. You can't always fix everything. We're going to alleviate the pain, take a deep breath, reset, move on. And then we're done. And then we get up, we start again. There's a song called Savannah, called Start Again by Savannah. And I play that song, and it's a little trippy, and I'll play it on repeat until I feel like I can breathe again. If you want, we can play it. if you want to just look at it later, you can.
I do want to hear it
That's,
at some point.
Yeah,
after
that's
the
like
interview.
that's a big one for me, is finding music and poetry that alleviates pain.
Right.
Because that's what it is. Being a human is being in pain. And for some people, they hold more pain than others, and some people hold pain and never talk about it, and some people hold pain and create out of it. Some people hold pain and cause pain. And how you choose to handle your pain is what makes you a human.
So one of the things that this project is about is kind of trying to find and identify. Well, it started as me saying, like, I want to find like queer creators who are isolated for some reason, like whether it's economic or like physical or mental or like actual literal distance or social. And how it's evolved is by understanding that, like, well, everybody has experienced isolation in some degree, and like that loneliness is something that community should be there for.
Yeah.
And like, how would you say that like various forms of isolation or loneliness have impacted you?
That's such a hard question to answer, because I do feel like I live a majority of my life in isolation. At first, when I was little, I was in isolation because I was the eldest, and I was more capable, and so my mother didn't have to worry about it. And so I had to worry about it. And then I got older, and I was in middle school, and it was good for a while because I had a friend. And then we moved, and I started high school in a new spot, and I was in isolation again. And I was raised with a set of morals that didn't budge. And so when it came to things like being social in high school, I was not a part of that group because I was not fitting in with the societal norms that other people had.
Are these your morals, or are these the morals you were raised with by your parents?
These were morals that I was raised with, and told and taught. Like, for example, like, I didn't have Snapchat, didn't have social media for a long time, which I'm grateful for, because I'm glad that I didn't get sucked into those societal norms, because bad things probably would have happened to me, knowing myself at 15. Bad things did happen to me whenever I stopped and whenever I stepped into those societal norms. And then I got out into college, and I kind of realized that I was living a farce, and I was being a good girl, and I was doing what I was told, and I was completing the objectives that were set in stone for me, and I kind of pictured myself being a mother and marrying a man, and, you know, just doing the good Lord's work.
Right.
And then I kind of realized I didn't want any of it.
Yeah.
And then I stepped into a new sort of isolation because I wasn't conforming. And so now it's gotten to a point to where I don't actively feel isolated because I genuinely enjoy my own company. I'm sure my neighbors get a kick out of it because I talk to myself and I make myself giggle, and I think that I'm the funniest person on earth. And, I kind of, like, I was telling friends a couple days ago, I was like, if you wouldn't have, like, romantic relations with yourself, there's an issue. And so that's kind of where I'm at, is like what they call like self-partner. I still very, very much crave that deep emotional connection, but I give it to myself first. And so it's easier for me to not see myself in isolation, because there was a long time where I was willing to bend in order to be loved. I have a line from a poem that says, "A year ago I would have allowed vultures to love me even if they picked me apart." And I'm choosing not to do that anymore, because it doesn't solve anything. And that's kind of where I'm at now, is, like I said, like, I have goals and I have myself, and if you're going to get in the way of either of those things, then you're not going to be in my life. And that's kind of, it's really hard to facilitate in person and in real life and in reality, because you lose a lot of people. But at the same time, I feel like I've saved myself from a lot of really bad experiences from doing that too.
Sure, yeah. It's a question I've been kind of like thinking over is like, I wonder how you relate to other people, especially other people your age.
I don't, and that's kind of the issue. Is like, I have friends, but I don't look at them and go, oh yeah, we're the same.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're not. And it's hard because I see myself as a watcher and as an observer. And while I am creating and I am participating in a lot of new things, the dissociation creates a distance. And that's one thing that I've kind of had to fight through over and over again, because when you do go through weeks or months of not really being there, you lose people. So that's why whenever I do have to start again and pick myself back up, I'm there. I've got it. I trust myself.
Mm-hmm.
I love myself. The decisions that I make on a daily basis are for me. And so that has helped the isolation work. It's not completely closed.
Of course.
Especially because I am a very romantic-driven person, and I've had to force myself to stay single because I don't have the balls, the rubber versus glass balls. And to me, if I were to be in a romantic relationship, it would have to be a rubber ball, and that's not fair.
I'm not familiar with this.
So when you're juggling balls, some of them are glass and some of them are rubber.
Oh, okay.
And there are rubber balls that you can drop. So like, for example, my dishes are a rubber ball. My dishes are always rubber ball because I hate them. That's just being for real. What's a glass ball is feeding my cats. I have to feed my cats every day.
I like that metaphor.
So while my romantic relationship is going to be one of those things where, yes, but at the same time, it's not a glass ball.
Right.
And that's a lot of things where, like, if you have too many glass balls, they're going to break.
Mm-hmm.
So some people are like, you have too much on your plate. And I'm like, no, I don't have too much on my plate. I have too many glass balls.
Right. Yeah. Because it's about knowing, like, well, I can let my kitchen be a mess. I can be late on this, but I can't be late on that.
Right.
One thing I'm very curious about. You're doing a lot of, like, arguably adult stuff right now. You own a nonprofit publication. Your practice and your mental health, like, focus and your self-awareness and self-care is, I think, at a level of development that someone perhaps with a more sheltered life would be spending this time in college figuring out. That's certainly how it was for me. You know, I didn't really get to a level of self-awareness that you have now until I was graduated from college, just because of where I was coming from. But something that I find very interesting about your specific situation is that the human brain is not finished developing until, like, 25, 26, 27, 28. So, like, there could be a bomb on the horizon that, like, completely changes things for you. Or, like, a slow, like, oh God, who knows, like, something is coming up. And the later it is, the more it's something, like it's bigger stuff, like bipolar disorder and manic episodes, or, like, some version of a schizoaffective disorder. How do you feel about not knowing, being as functional as you are right now and doing so much stuff, how do you feel about not knowing how you're going to change as a person?
I change every day. No, but seriously, I try really hard to, like, okay, here's my hot take. I do have schizophrenia that runs in my family, and it really pisses me off because we sit here and we look at people who have mental disorders, but let's think back to before they were putting drugs in our water, and think back to before. Who were people who had schizophrenia? Were they the prophets? Were they the people who were in the churches? Were they the leaders because they had a higher relation to whatever other worldly spirit was out there? And just because someone's brain functions differently or does feel little weird tics doesn't mean
Of course.
that it's a disorder. So for me, my biggest fear is becoming schizophrenic and losing my touch in reality.
Yes. Yeah.
But with that being said, there are my morals, authenticity, kindness, not gentleness, but kindness, and the truth. So whenever I'm having a hard time, I'm like, who am I? What am I doing? Where am I at? What are my goals? What are my morals?
Yeah.
Where do I stand? And humans are meant to fluctuate and move and grow. And just because yesterday I said that I liked, let's just say, let me think of something that has changed recently. I feel like I change every day. There's always, like, I tell people all the time, like, I'll try things over and over and over and over again. So, for example, like, our taste buds change every 7 years. So, I used to really, really hate, like, bell peppers and onions and, like, but now I love them. And that's something that changed. And things are going to change every day. And you can't predict the future. You can only wake up every day and go, who am I? What am I here to do? Let's get it done.
Totally. I mean, I don't have a lot of friends, but
I'm gonna think about that later. So I'm like, man.
All of my friends have, and I mean this literally. I'm not speaking figuratively because I don't have any friends. All of my friends have bipolar disorder.
Okay.
And half of them are also some kind of like schizoid spectrum. Okay. So they're somewhere on that. And most of them are fine, from what I understand. And they're all around my age or older. It's a matter of like, well, most of the time you don't know that you're having a manic episode until, especially the first few times that something like that happens.
Yeah.
Until after it's already happening,
yeah.
And you're like, oh wait, I'm not the second coming of Jesus Christ or something, and like, and then. Yeah. It eventually leads to people getting a doctor that they trust and having friends who have that doctor's number and having their meds figured out. Like, it's just a matter of like kind of failing your way into being functional.
Yeah.
And I think what I really respect about your focus is that for you, I think it would, for a lot of people, something like that happening would be really scary. It would be really like out of left field. A lot of people don't like thinking of themselves as they drink the punch with like mental illness othering you and making you less than. And so when stuff like that happens, people's gut reaction is like, well, that's not me. That cannot be happening. And so when it finally does happen, they have to be forced by circumstances to accept these things in themselves and like come to terms with that. But you are somebody who's kind of expecting these things.
Yeah, because, well, and truth be told, when I get to the point where I am stressed, I will have hallucinations.
Sure, right.
But that's a normal part of the human psyche because it's a barrier to protect yourself from harm.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of the things where I'm like, fucked up shit is gonna happen, bro. Like, it's gonna happen. There's been too many times in my life where I've gone, what the fuck? For me to try to premeditate. There was a time where I did try to premeditate, predict, and prevent. And like I said, at this point, I feel like I am on a kayak on a river. It's never going to stop moving.
Yeah.
And one day I'm going to hit a rock and we're going to stop moving. And it's going to be out of my hands at that point. I kind of have a trust with my gods that they're going to remove me when they feel like I've done my job. And my life is not in my hands. It's not my decision to decide whether or not I get to jump off the boat.
Right.
I'm buckled in, whether I like it or not. Sometimes the boat flips over, and sometimes I drown for a little bit, but the boat rights itself.
Yeah.
And the boat takes me places that are really cool sometimes. So
from a craft perspective, like as a writer, what are your, like, in terms of especially poetry, like what are your fascinations with form or structure? For example, like I love punctuation in poetry. I love like formatting and line separation. I love color in poetry, and like how those things can accentuate meaning.
Yeah.
What are your kind of like predilections when it comes to how poetry functions?
It just depends. It depends on how I read it. So I started doing poetry as a slam poetry.
Mm-hmm.
So like in my new book, Dumpster Fire in a Meadow, there are some I's that aren't italicized because I didn't see myself as a person. And so I didn't italicize the I. Or there were lines where I felt like I was hyperventilating when I was writing it, and so there's no punctuation. Or there's punctuation and M dashes over and over and over again because I felt like I couldn't get it out.
Now, was that an intentional choice, or is that something you did in the moment and then allowed, and then you left it that way?
I do it in the moment and then I leave it that way. The way that I write it down, the way that I put it out there is the way that it stays.
Got it.
So for my books, you can look at it and say, well, this is very minimal editing. I look at it and go, no, this is how I felt. This is who I was. And so we're going to preserve that because I want people to look at it. There's this, so I went to this artist was called Ty Johnson, and I was looking at his collections at Second Art Walk a couple of days ago, and I realized that art is supposed to show you what the artist was, where the artist was at, and I want my art for people to look back at my art and be like, oh my gosh, she's grown so much. Like I look at Righteous Abandonment and I go, she was a baby, you know? And now Dumpster Fire in a Meadow is coming out, and I can't even imagine how 25-year-old me is going to go back and look at it. Because there's poems in there about my mother and us and repairing our relationship, and now we're currently in contact. So it's kind of like, just however it gets out is how we're going to leave it. So I try to preserve that emotion and that feeling as much as possible.
So I've got maybe 4 more questions.
Okay.
The first one is, I think everybody who's as busy as you has some version of their, like, I need to take a break and, like, rest. For some people, it's a cliche, I have money version of, like, going on vacation or something. For other people, it's like, I'm just going to stop speaking to everyone and not leave my home for, like, a few weeks. What's your version of, like, just resting and, like, letting all the threads drop for a moment?
I don't know. It depends. A big one recently has been leaving my phone at home and going on a walk.
Love it.
Leaving my phone at home and going into the garden. Being inaccessible to me is my vacation. How I choose, I love to create, like I have this dress here that I've been working on, so sometimes I'll turn my phone off and work on the dress. Sometimes I'll turn my phone off and I'll watercolor. It really just depends on where I'm at mentally and how much energy I have. But for me, taking a break is more, it's easy for me to reset my nervous system because I've done it so many times. I try to do at least 15-30 minutes of just deep breathing, mindfulness meditation, of just trying to take the thoughts that come in and just quiet them. And focusing back, like, into my body.
It's so important to do nothing for at least 10 minutes a day.
Be bored.
Yeah, on purpose.
Be bored.
Yes.
Yeah, and just the act of being bored can help create more gray matter in your brain.
Truly, that's, I think, one of the biggest, like, advantages of being born before the prevalence of the smartphone is that, like, there were many aspects of life for which boredom was inevitable. Long car drives, there's nothing you can do about being bored. Like, waiting rooms, doctor's offices, or your parents can't pick you up for like 4 or 5 hours. You run out of stuff to do with homework because you don't have your textbooks. Boredom. Just sitting and doing nothing. So, okay, my next question is, there's 2 questions I've been asking everybody. The first one is, if you could change anything about the queer spaces that you have experienced, what would you change?
Stop trying to make people label themselves. Stop trying to put people into boxes. I keep having this, there's Discord on TikTok about he, him lesbians, and how, like, what people are allowed into what spaces. Eliminate the spaces. Eliminate the binary. Like, there's no reason why humans should be labeled in any way, shape, or form. That's a big one for me, especially when it comes to, like, just, for example, sports. I wrestled in high school. I wrestled with boys. You know why? Because there wasn't a girls team. And it's not that big of a deal. Sports weren't binary. That wasn't a thing. And it really makes me frustrated because people, like, I get, like, you have to be able to be like, oh yeah, I'm a lesbian because I date girls. Or But, like, that's not always true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, you can identify as a lesbian for your entire life, and then one day you meet a man, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the love of my life. Or vice versa.
Yeah.
You're straight your entire life, and then you meet a woman, you're like, oh my gosh. Just take a deep breath. And, like, I see a lot of people who have to, like, they're very, and maybe this is me being a prude, but they're very open about their sexual advances. And I feel like it's a coping mechanism, because if you, for me, so like the word faggot for me, it makes me very much like, because people were beaten and murdered and killed while that word was being said.
Mm-hmm.
And then people use it to call that to themselves, because if I call myself a faggot, you can't call me a faggot. And it's really hard for me to sit and listen to sit in those spaces, because that's kind of the energy that we have now. Is, well, I'm going to hurt myself, because if I hurt myself before, then you can't hurt me.
What about reclaiming a term, though?
But you can't reclaim a term if you're using it. I feel like it's the same thing as people using the N-word, and I feel like, yes, that's your prerogative and that's your identity, and if that's how you would like to hold space in your culture, that's okay. But for me, I don't want to hear the word, because, like I said, people were beaten, and every time I hear it, I picture Stonewall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, well, yes, I wasn't there for Stonewall, obviously. I can't imagine walking down the street and hearing that word and thinking it was about me. And so people just say it, and I'm like, and it's like a visceral reaction. Of course, like, I'm obviously not going to be like, you can't say that, because that's not my place.
Right.
It's none of my business. But since you asked the question, that's my, like, the queer spaces, it's just, there's a lot of violence.
Oh, yeah, sure.
There's a lot of inter-queer violence.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm like, I've stopped asking people their sexuality, and I didn't know that, like, what are your pronouns? Like, I thought that was me being respectful, and then I had it happen to me, and I was like, and then I kind of was just like,
right.
I was like, any of them? Like, what do, like,
well, with
you know?
with queer spaces, everything is so diverse. Like,
right.
There's so many different types of people, even just in trans spaces. Like, there's trans people for whom the gender question is like kind of an infringement, where you're like, I don't like this question, and there's some for whom not asking it is just as much of an infringement.
Right.
And like, it's such a messy space of people firing in all different directions all at the same time. I think I agree with you to an extent that, like, having less emphasis on what everyone's labels are, so that people who feel that it is necessary can make those clear, and people that feel like they otherwise would be forced to and focus on it too much can just kind of let things like roll.
Yeah.
And that's the other big thing, is like, people change a lot. Like, I, over the course of being trans, I went from being like a cross-dresser to being like pangender or polygender or whatever the fuck, and finally I landed on agender, which is me kind of being like, I'm washing my hands. I don't care. I'm done. It's everybody else's problem. So moving
I love
on.
that.
Like,
I love that, yeah.
And but for me, though, even still, the pronoun question is super important, because for me, like, the only pronoun that fits is a true neutral. Because everything else is like a label.
Yeah.
And in queer spaces, there's a lot of people who feel like they know exactly what the world is already like. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really when the biggest problems come around, is when people who, especially people that are like controlling spaces to some degree, assume that they already know up and down. And so that there's no more questions left to ask. So another question I've been asking everybody is, what is a coping skill that you have used in your moments of isolation that has helped you the most? I kind of already answered this, but I want to hear a succinct.
So a couple of days ago, I was having a moment where I was. It's kind of hard, because it's like it feels dumb, but at the same time, like, and just and just great. Even just like, you're okay, gonna be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm trying really hard not to cry right now because I'm putting myself in that space
Yes.
of like, because there are times where like, especially for people who, I call it the shakes, but there are times that I don't know that I'm dysregulated until I realize that my entire body is vibrating. Or I realize that I'm overstimulated. Because I only get overstimulated when my nervous system's messed up. So for me, it's a lot of identifying, you're upset, and, okay, let's come back.
Yeah.
Let's come back right here, because this is where we need to be. If we're out here, we're not paying attention to what's happening right here. So for my coping skill, it's just coming back to my breath, coming back to my body.
Love it.
I'm a big like energy person, and so I kind of try to figure out where my energy's at. I can visualize it, I can see it, and then I reel it back in with my breath. So like I breathe in, it's in. And we do that until we feel better.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just a lot of like, all right, shake it off. I usually try to take a shower after,
Mm-hmm.
so like the cleansing and the washing away, washing away the pain, the frustration, the anger. And then you start again.
I love it. That's a great answer, actually. Like, small little practical things like that are what I'm looking for with that question.
Yeah.
The last question, I haven't been asking everybody this because it just kind of comes up.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you, and this is a cop-out question. Everybody asks this question, but I mean it when I say it. Where do you want to be in like 10 years? Right now in this moment.
In 10 years, I would like Rising Dawn to be self-sufficient. I would like to be mainly doing like work with my volunteers and trying to help them with whatever they need help with. I hope that I have a degree and I'm using it to help people. I'm trying to get my degree in English, critical literacy, and social studies.
Cool.
So I'm hoping that I can be a teacher and start teaching, like I would love to do English classes at a local library and teach people English without being like, you have to pay $1,000 to go to school. And I want to teach, and I want to breathe, and I want to not have to worry about it.
Okay. One last question.
Okay.
Especially, and this is especially relevant given your relationship with time. What's something that you might say to a version of yourself in the future that is coming back and watching this from a totally different perspective in life? A little time capsule here.
I love you.
Lovely.
I hope that she's happy. I hope that she's as happy now as I am now.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that we get everything we're working towards. I have notes from, I write myself future letters.
Sure.
That's a big thing that I do too. I have a box that if I'm having a hard time, I will just write a letter and be like, hey, I love you, I hope that you're doing good, here's where we're at, here's what we're going towards. I seal it up and I write a random date on it and I stick it in a box. And once a year I go through and I open up the box and I figure out what letters I have for that year and I pull them out.
How long have you been doing that?
I started doing it I think I started doing it the end of my junior year or the start of my senior year.
Of high school?
Of high school.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool because I have letters from old friends that we aren't friends anymore. I have letters from old teachers. If I really feel like somebody has created an impact in my life, I'll ask them to write me a letter and I'll put it in the box. And that started because I was having suicidal ideation.
Oh, I love that.
And
That's great.
I knew that I needed to give myself the love that I didn't feel like I deserved.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a big thing is one of the, because again, the questions will volley in my brain. It's not always like I'm aware of it. Sometimes it just pops in there. And one thing is, did I do a good job?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you did a good job. Did I do a good job? Yes, you did a good job. And it's just like constantly, and I tell people like I'm tired. I'm always tired because I'm constantly having to reaffirm myself and love myself, and I feel like it's harder for people to love themselves than it is for people to love other people.
Oh yeah, sure.
But it's worth it. It's so worth it to get to the point where you trust yourself enough that even when people are condemning your actions, you're like, no, that needed to happen because I need to protect myself.
Yeah.
That's a big one for me. So, yeah,
Cool.
I started that.
Well, it's been lovely talking to you and learning about your practice here.
Same. I appreciate you giving me some questions to ponder over.
Yeah, it's my job.